Hi, this is Holly. In this soap making video, I'll show you how I use leftover soap from a previous project to create a colorful in-bed soap that's scented with a lavender geranium blend of essential oils. The recipe I used will be shown at the end of this video entered into a soap calculator, and all the other details and information will be listed in the description box below. I ended up with a lot of leftover soap from my natural color soap project that I worked on earlier this year and decided to make a couple of rainbow in-bed soaps. For this one, I cut the scraps into long pieces to be placed individually in the mold. In my other in-bed soap that I'll show in a later video, I chopped the remaining scraps into small squares and mixed them into the soap batter before pouring. For both of these soaps, I did adjust my recipe weight to account for the embeds. I first weighed them and then multiplied that number by 0.7 to get an approximate weight of the oils in the soap scraps. Generally, the oils in my recipes make up about 70% of the soap, but if you want to be more precise for your soap scraps, I'll leave some links below that go into more detail. So after I calculated the oil weight, I just subtracted that from my original recipe to get my new recipe weight. Soap making involves the use of sodium hydroxide, or lye, so be sure to protect your skin and eyes during the entire soap making process. Work in a well-ventilated area away from children and pets, and never stand directly over the container or breathe any of the fumes. Links on lye safety and beginner soap making are listed below. I added the sodium hydroxide to the distilled water and gently stirred until I was sure it had all dissolved. Then I sat it aside to cool. I often like to add kaolin clay to my soaps and normally blend it in with the essential oils, but I decided to try something different this time and added it to the lye instead. After stirring it in, I noticed it wasn't quite as mixed as I would like, so just to make sure I didn't end up with specks of hard clay in the finished soap, I strained the lye into the oils. I probably could have skipped this straining step because the clay was actually very soft and blended just fine. wanted the soap to be thick enough to hold the embeds and keep them from sinking, so I blended to a medium trace. The soap did get a little thicker than I planned, and I was concerned about air pockets forming around the embeds, but thankfully that didn't happen. I oven process the soap as I normally do by placing it in a warm oven that's been turned off and leaving it overnight. I do leave the oven light on for a bit to help hold the heat a little longer, but I always turn it off after about 3 hours. I removed the soap from the oven the next morning and was able to unmold and cut it a few hours later. I waited one more day to trim the soaps and used a handy new beveling tool that I received from Custom Craft Tools. The Edgemobile has an adjustable blade and a channel for the soap to rest, so you get even bevels every time. I set the blade at a depth to give me a small bevel and then let the soap gently glide across. I really enjoyed using this tool because it gave me even edges all the way around the soap. I did periodically wipe the beveler down, and I found it worked well on soap that sits a day or two after cutting, since really fresh soap can be quite soft and easily dented. Thank you so much to Custom Craft Tools for sending me the Edgemobile to try out, and for providing me with a coupon code to share that you'll find listed in the description box below. Since I was making a cold process soap, I left the top of lye set to sodium hydroxide, or NaOH. My recipe oil weight was 1100 grams, after accounting for the 200 grams in oil weight of my soap scraps that I calculated earlier in the video. My lye concentration was set to 35%, which means my lye solution consisted of 35% sodium hydroxide and 65% distilled water. I set the superfat to 6%, and my fragrance usage rate was 45 grams per kilogram. This recipe does contain lard, so I'll list a lard-free recipe I really like following this one. Once you have everything entered, you just select to calculate the recipe, then to view or print it. SoapCalc will give you a really nice listing of all of your ingredients, including the amount of sodium hydroxide required to saponify your oils. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you found something useful here to help you in your soap making.